when I was here the last time
Yes,
with Ann Beretta,
yes, yes.
and Ann and I were sitting here, and you told the story about when Father Joyce first asked you to be an academic advisor.
Yeah, that was in 1964. 1964. Eric Parsegan was hired in the spring or right after the maybe January 1st. Well, he took over for that spring ball. I remember that. And it was in 1964. And during the summer of 64, he decided to set up the academic advising program. He and Father Joyce. Father Joyce is the one that worked directly with me
Mm-hmm.
because Father Hesburgh had assigned athletics to Father Joyce to take care of and work with budgets and coaches and all that stuff. And so I the first meeting that I had was with Father Hesburgh and Father Joyce, and that's when they asked me if I would want to be the academic advisor, the director of academic advising that they were thinking of starting, and I wasn't interested at all. I'm ashamed to say it now, but that's the truth. In fact, so much so that I told him that I wanted a couple of days to discuss it with Polly. I had signed a 3-year contract back in 54, 10 years before that, and to design and teach, design a laboratory of heat transfer for the mechanical engineering department, and also teach courses in heat transfer, air conditioning, and refrigeration. And so I taught a course for the architects, which I called it engineering synthesis, having to do with heating, ventilation, air conditioning. The intention is to get architects to be a little bit more sensitive to and know enough about what is needed in the design of buildings for and making provisions for the air conditioning requirements, ventilation requirements, heating requirements, plumbing requirements, and so on, the mechanical system. And which is what I did when I left Notre Dame. You know, I went to work for Nash Kelvinator Corporation in New Jersey, and they in turn were starting to put air conditioning systems into hospitals. Theaters were the only people that were really could afford air conditioning, and that's a strange thing. Theaters were the first commercial buildings that had air conditioning system design. Well, we Nash Kelvinator Corporation thought that the home would be another building that they could design air conditioning for, rooms, a room air conditioner, and specialty equipment like for hospitals where you needed it in the operating rooms and a lot of areas where you wanted to maintain sterile and clean atmosphere, so you wanted to control the ventilation as well. And that's what I was doing for about 3 or 4 years. And I was working on a project, the design of a hospital in Caracas, Venezuela. Was never there, had the plans that I was working on at the time. So I told them I told him all this. I told that to the dean of engineering when Polly and I visited 1964 in the summer. I think it was in July. And when I came to visit, I ran into the dean of the College of Engineering. His name was Karl Schoenherr. He was German. Great guy. Smart. Designed hydraulic equipment for battleships and other marine things. I don't know what else he did. In fact, there's a Schoenherr equation that they use when they study that stuff. I call it stuff. Anyway, and he asked me, and I just told him essentially what I just told you about what I did, you know. And he said, Mike, we don't teach any air conditioning or this or that or the other thing. He said, would you be interested in coming here and build a laboratory, experiments for us and so on, and teach courses in air conditioning, refrigeration, ventilation, and so on? I said, well, I don't know, but let me go and go home. This is another episode where I want to go home and ask my wife. And he said, so we talked, but at that time I just told him, I said, well, my wife and I would like to talk about it. Would you send me something in writing to let me know what I would make, you know, a salary and so on? And he said, yeah, well, I'll do that. Well, Christ, by the time I went back to Chicago where we were vacationing, and then I finally get home, the letter was waiting for me at our home. So Polly and I read it. I'm going to tell you something. I don't know too many people that know this, and it's not embarrassing or anything, but I was making $10,000, and this is 1954, $10,000 a year plus $85, what's his name, car allowance, because I would have to travel and see some of these air conditioning systems we were working with. And so it, you know, it was and in those days it was a very, very good salary. I opened up the letter. I still have it, so it's not a question of whether I have proof or not. I still have the letter downstairs in my file. He offered me $5,000 a year to come and teach and build a laboratory. And he also told me over the phone that he would see to it, since teaching was only an 8-month contract, that I would be able to work at Bendix doing some work for them, and they would pay me at least $1,000 or more for the summer. So I would, the only prospect I had was Notre Dame plus Bendix for $6,000. I said, holy shit. I mentioned that to Polly, and I wasn't that keen on coming. She said, she was dead set on staying. She didn't want to stay on the East Coast. She's from West Virginia. I don't think they have even locks on their doors in West Virginia when they go to sleep at night. I don't know whether they do or not. Whereas in Newark, where I was living, Christ, I must have had 3 or 4 locks. Bolt this and that, because of the it's a different atmosphere. And so I thought, and I was building another home for us that I was going to move into that Thanksgiving, that I was building, because my wife wanted me to get the hell out of Newark. We never moved into the house that we were having built. Never moved into it even for a minute. So now we agreed to come because I knew that if I didn't want a divorce, I'd probably have to change. So I said yes. So I went, and like I said, I signed a 3-year contract because I figured it would take me 2 or 3 years to teach this course, and I always had some graduate student with me to learn it so he can teach it when I left. And the same, anyway, and then when I came here, I went to meet with Walt Langford, who was then the coach of fencing, and he wasn't a fencer in any way, or even a coach of fencing, other than the fact that he kept fencing alive. There had maybe about a dozen kids who were fencing in those days. And so I went and I started because I used to fence before I came to Notre Dame as a student, and even after I left here, I fenced. I was in the AFLA in New Jersey, and I had fenced and won a few tournaments.
So when
Daddy, what time